Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mysterious Huntsman Show. And tonight I have a very special guest. We have Abbie with us tonight. And Abbie's just going to come on here and tell us a little bit about herself and some of the things she's experienced in her past and probably still experiences to this day. She is an astrologer. Is that right to say?
Correct.
Any other talents that you have?
I do magic occasionally.
All right, let's go. I like magic. All right. Well, thank you for being here. So I know we talked before, and we've talked about a lot of similar interests, and I really think we have a lot of some of the same, or we have the same mindset as a lot of people do around here. So I'm just gonna let you have it and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Abbie. I'm 32 years old. I'm a woman. I grew up in Oklahoma. So there's like a lot of Native American superstitions around the area too. Kind of a subtle background note. I was raised an evangelical Christian. So I was very spiritual my whole life. And then I just went on a journey of, what do you call it? Had multiple ego deaths and did the shadow work and, came back, I feel like fully as myself now. And I practice witchcraft. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot more normal than people would probably assume. It sounds strange and wild, but I think it's a little bit more mundane than people might expect.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I grew up Christian as well. So there's a lot of, especially in the Bible Belt, there's a lot of negative connotations about a lot of that. But, people don't really know a lot of the ins and outs of some of the stuff if they don't ask. Like you said, you've been on a journey and you've expanded your mind on a lot of different things. So you also mentioned that you have lived in some places that have you've had experiences maybe with haunted or ghost-like stuff, or you think it's something else trying to contact?
Oh, I definitely think it was like a ghost form of an entity. I've never seen any apparitions, but there was definitely some strong paranormal activity in the house that I lived at in college. Went to Oklahoma State, go Pokes. But yeah, I lived in the house for 2 years and was also having experiences at the house because my friends lived there. So 2 years before that, even I had experiences there as well.
Okay. Like what? Do you have anything in mind?
Oh yeah, my first experience was actually when I didn't live there. The first year I just visited the house. The house was built in the 1920s, and the legend has it that it caught on fire at one point. I'm not sure what the results of the damage were, but there was kind of some evidence that may point to fire damage in its history. But there was a garage in the back of the house, and like one of the detached garages kind of thing.
Yeah.
My sorority decided to set up painting their homecoming sign decoration, and I was part of that team. And so we could basically just come there and work on it whenever we had free time. It was a come and go policy. And my big lived at the house, and so I could basically kind of run in and out of the house, in and out of the garage, and whatever. So I was working late there one night, and was really tired. I was an architecture student, so I was always exhausted. And there's some strange energy in the architecture building as well, but the house. Just painting by myself in the garage one night, and I hear these heavy footsteps on the roof. Mind you, there's a very large tree that's like jutting out over the roof of the garage.
Okay.
So it's not possible for someone to just take casual rhythmic footsteps across the roof because they would hit a branch.
Sure.
So I was like, maybe I'm really tired. Maybe I'm hallucinating. And so I just kind of go back to painting. It's 2 a.m. I am tired. So I just kind of write it off. I'm like, whatever. It keeps happening. Second time, I'm like, okay. And then third time's the charm. I'm like, I'm out of here. And I run inside, and face is white. And I'm telling the people who live there, I'm like, somebody's outside. And so
you weren't thinking paranormal at first. You were just thinking maybe somebody was
well, yeah. At the time, I was like, someone must be walking around there. But then my logic is like, who would be walking around on the roof at 2 a.m? Like, and also not possible. I've seen the top of the roof. So I go in there and I just say, someone's outside. Someone's walking on the roof. I don't know what's going on. But they had kind of already said it's haunted. But there's those things you tell yourself because you're like, when before you're a believer, you got to make all of the logical excuses. You got to investigate all of the
Sure.
probable cause or whatever. I don't have my words today. But so my big fear is this, and she's a very protective person. And so she grabs a chef's knife out of the kitchen and runs outside into the dark, screaming.
Typical movie.
Right. Typical movie. Cursing into the wind. I was like, I'm not going back. I'm not going back out. Like, I was just scared. I couldn't do it. And then I was hanging out there, not painting, on a different weekend, probably like 2 weeks later, but there were other people working in the garage. And then as I'm hanging out, I hear somebody run in the back door. And it was one of the girls that lived there, and her face, white, eyes, huge. And she was like, I heard the footsteps. And I was like, see? Like, I'm just like, oh my God, there's something that is like existing here.
Yeah.
And
wow.
we did believe that there was also a second entity that was there that actually took I don't have my words today. It was residing in the house. It was like, I think it was a man at the garage or on the garage. And I think there was a woman that like occupied the space in the house.
Okay.
Because the girls that lived there always said that they felt like their shoes went missing. So they're like, ghost like shoes, maybe it's a woman. I don't know. And so there have been some stories of people hearing like something shattering, but then nothing would be broken. My sister and I, when we both lived there the last year I was in college, were in the kitchen, and we had this like little, we called it a hutch, where we kind of like had our pantry and stuff. It had like a latch, like one of those. It like has like an eye and then like a hook.
Sure.
It had lights like that, so it's like you have to flip the hook up for the doors to come open. We were just standing in the kitchen one night talking, and then those shutters just came open.
Wow.
Blue. Things opening. There was another story from a roommate that lived there in the top area, which was allegedly the most haunted area, the like attic-ish space, but it had been converted into like a bedroom. And then there was like a little crawl space area with a closet. You could open the door, and apparently there was some creepy toys still in that space, like dolls and stuff. So nobody ever went in there.
Sure.
We just kind of left it there.
Yeah.
And I was like, you couldn't pay me to live in that room upstairs. But people did. And so, yeah, there was one of the girls that lived up there. Her and her boyfriend were hanging out up there. And she said, we were both smoking some of the devil's lettuce, but like we weren't crazy out of our mind. We're just kind of casually smoking. Her scarf just started levitating. It was like a scarf that was like hanging over the door of her closet. The scarf literally started levitating, and they were so scared they ran outside and didn't come back in all night. They like went over to his house.
Wow. There's a pretty common trope that when people are remodeling or just making a little too much noise or trying to change things, that these things tend to get active. Have you ever heard of that before?
I 100% believe that, because the 2 years that I lived there, I had 2 different sets of roommates. The first set of roommates, I loved them, but there was a lot of drama because of external forces. There's just like a lot of emotional instability. And that was the period where there was the most activity. And then when new roommates moved in, none of us had any real drama. It was like me and my sister and like these 2 girls that were just kind of like academics. They didn't really cause a lot of trouble. It was like almost no activity.
Well, yeah, as well as I do, a lot of things feed off of negative energy as well as good energy. And it depends on how you handle the situation. So a lot of times if you go into a place and you're fearful, it can make things worse, and you will get even more scared, but like I said, a lot more about that than I do, probably. How did you get into this line? And I know you said you were doing like some soul searching, basically, or just checking things out when you were younger as you were growing up. But what made you, was there any kind of one event that started you on this path? Is there one event that started you on this path?
It's kind of hard to say that it was just one event, because I feel like there were a lot of events leading up to the thing that sort of turns the dial to like agnostic to which. And a lot of those things were things that happened at that house. Like there's still a couple stories that I could tell that I do kind of feel like, was that someone trying to reach me in college? Because I did have a kind of toxic boyfriend at the time, and sometimes if it's like, part of your karmic journey, there will be like spiritual events that are trying to like point that out to you. Like, you need to get away from this person, or, something's not right. And people kind of mistake those things for, they just kind of write them off. But like, if you are having something strange happen that seems external to an event in your life, you might re-examine what's going on,
Right.
because strange things can happen around um, seemingly normal times, and they're trying to let you know, like, actually, this period right here is off, even though it feels normal. But I think the biggest thing, like, that really changed my mind was getting back into astrology when I found out, oh, it's not just like the sun's position, it's like all of the planets. And there's a lot of physics that like can, or like you could call it like pseudo-ish physics. It's like a little bit of pseudoscience-y sounding things, but like we all know that like gravity is like a universal force, you know? So like the gravity for planets far, far off are technically affecting us. And for a lot of them, the light even reaches us. And there's like radiation, all those kinds of things. So
The
like
Schumann resonance.
the Schumann
Is it? Yeah,
resonance,
I know that's a big deal.
right? But there was I had done a couple of moves and like, been living my life normally, and then I moved back to my sort of identified hometown, into a house I really liked. I didn't have any friends, and the first friend that I made was an old friend from a college, and I found out she still, lived there, and she was like, "Hey, we should, hang out." And she was in one of the girls that lived in that same house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we were like homecoming sign directors together, and I just remember really enjoying living with her. And we actually lived. She was living in the room that I moved into after she left, so we had both lived in the same room.
Okay.
So she comes to my house and she tells me I'm a witch, and I'm like, just light bulbs went off. I was like, what? And she told me her whole experience, and I was like, this is interesting. This is really interesting because we were both very, very Christian people. And then I was just really interested in what led her down that path. So,
Yeah.
it got me curious about it.
Sure. As it would. I mean, everybody's searching for something, especially now. And, it is, the whole period is off. I don't know what it is. Speaking even from a Christian standpoint, something's off.
I think we can all feel that something ain't right.
we all feel it, and we all recognize it, but it's like there's something pushing us toward either a bigger awakening or an apocalyptic dystopian future. I don't know, but it's definitely off. And, across the board, no matter what you do, it feels off. So, and you mentioned astrology.
Mm-hmm.
So that was even pre-biblical times. I think astrology has even been taken out of the Bible because they used to go by the signs, the sun, the moon, stars, the planets. I mean, it was a big deal to them, but it still, I think it was taken out or left out. But what do you think those forces are, and why would they affect our planet?
Well,
that's a deep question, right?
It's really funny you mentioned astrology taken out of the Bible, because you can kind of see little remnants of things like Jesus and Lucifer both being called the morning star is really interesting. Venus is the morning star, just to point out one of them. But what do I think the forces are? I can't say exactly what it is. I watched this super long lecture on astrophysics like the other night, talking about basically explaining how theories of mathematics have already proved multiverse exists, like almost without a doubt. Like, and the same people who did that like also proved other things exist before they were able to like point to it. They just kind of walked you through this video of like theory after theory after theory, how did we get to the multiverse, kind of explaining how the fifth dimension is like the shadow realm or something. And they're basically kind of describing like what ghost hunters already do. They're talking about electromagnetic fields. They were talking about gravity. They were talking about sleep paralysis demons, possibly be
Yeah.
made out of dark energy, and that's what people are seeing. Or people like accidentally running into like apparently we exist in this parallel dimension, or there's like a mirror dimension that's like right alongside us, and we don't feel it most of the time until we run into something. And I'm like, aren't you guys just kind of scientifically talking about like the spirit realm? But you guys don't like those words, so we're not allowed to say those words, or we're crazy. But
Yeah. No, I think they all know it exists, but they're trying to put math around it, and it may not work for them.
yeah,
They're trying to. I think they believe it's real. They just can't science it away, and they want to. They want to be able to. And mathematically, yeah, they have proven that there are multiple universes. They just can't seem to crack the code or crack into that realm. But I mean, sometimes it just cracks in no matter what.
Mhm.
It's like I know you've heard of the stone tape theory, where it's like hauntings, or they're either like intelligent hauntings where you can communicate, you could like actually speak with or have an interaction with, or there is residual haunting where stuff just kind of happens without, like, it's like around here you hear about Civil War soldiers, they going across the field, but they don't acknowledge me. They're just like living
Mhm.
they're living their thing. It's almost like it's imprinted in time, and you have so much like quartz and limestone and a lot of stuff underneath the earth that when the conditions are right, the EMF field, the Schumann resonance, whatever, even thunderstorms, it can basically pull up a tape, a videotape, an old tape of that soldier moving across the fields. It's all happening at the same time. So, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's all existing at the same time we're existing. So sometimes we see through the veil, sometimes we don't.
Mhm.
If that,
Well,
I don't have a clue where I was going with that, but
I mean, they were talking about how, now we've just broken into quantum computing.
yeah,
Right. At cold enough temperatures, they can get way more data out of things, et cetera, et cetera. And they were kind of talking about how the quantum thing applies to our own brains and DNA. Because if you think about it, if all matter can store information in theory, we could be made out of other memories that we haven't experienced, right? So that actually also really was feel like that's very scientifically grounded right there. Some people say they have memories. I was just watching this video about Miley Cyrus saying she had a memory of being in her mother's womb when she was in her mother's womb. They have the the eggs are already in the embryo
yeah.
in the woman who's pregnant, type thing.
Was she Hannah Montana at that point?
Were you Hannah Montana or Miley at that point? I think she's always been both, because if you're going to entertain the quantum theory, then she's
Right.
both.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, did they mention the document? I'm not speaking what they either, but the documentary. So did they mention anything about quantum entanglement?
They weren't talking about quantum entanglement on that, but
It's like no matter how vast the distance, everything was still connected.
Right. They did test the spin. It's and they tested the spin of a neutron or something like that, and then they separate them on opposite poles of the Earth or something, and then they change the spin of one, and then the other one randomly changed. Yeah.
That's what I think Einstein called that spooky actions at a distance. But he was way ahead of his time. He was talking about the quantum entanglement or the quantum field. Yeah, it kind of shows that we are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And they know it's there. They're just trying to figure it out. How do you think that plays into my favorite topic as far as, and I'm just moving along here. What do you think about the possibility of the UFO presence, the non-human intelligences, that everybody's calling now the NHIs or the UAPs? It's all new terminology, but it's still some of the same.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Do you think we're being visited from other worlds, or is it something interdimensional? Is it something ultra-terrestrial inside the Earth we haven't discovered yet?
Oh God,
it's a big topic.
I go back and forth on it, because right after I watched the astrophysics thing, there was a video about the Fermi paradox, and I was like, well, I gotta watch that now. So I went out on all the theories around the Fermi paradox, and I was just like, man, now I don't know what I believe anymore. I like to believe that maybe somehow it's us. and they've evolved in a different way, and then they've come back to just observe. Like,
Yeah, it's very possible. I know. Are you familiar with Rendlesham Forest incident? It's like the UK Roswell. It was back in the 80s, and they had a crash there. I actually spoke with, I think his staff, retired Staff Sergeant Jim Pennison, who was there. He saw it. It's been everywhere. It's all over the place. It's a big, well documented story. But he actually walked up to the craft that had landed and touched it, and instantly received a download. And he didn't realize it. But years later, I think he passed out. I hope that I'm not speaking out of turn, but I think he might have passed out or just went blank. Years later, he just took a notebook and started writing ones and zeros, like just binary code, right? They started doing research into the binary code, or the code, trying to get it decoded. And it started telling it, basically the whole story was they were from the future. They were us, right? From the future that were like checking things out. So, I mean, it's totally possible.
One of the most interesting theories that I just learned about the Fermi paradox was that they think that life on other planets could be severely limited, again, because of like the whole Goldilocks planet concept.
Right.
But they said there could be life, but it may not have ever evolved past like where our ocean life is, because most of the planets they've seen that have water are like almost completely covered. And so, like, for whatever reason, they think that, well, like an octopus could evolve to be a human level of society or something like that. But because of the lack of resources underwater, they don't evolve. And I'm like, but wouldn't the octopus like technically work out how to do that underwater? I don't know. Know. I'm not a biologist, but
they're incredible creatures.
They are.
I mean, if anything's alien on this planet, they think it's them because they're super smart. They're chameleons. They can do anything. They learn at aggressive rates. They study us while we're there, and that's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, they're fascinating.
Man, lost that train too. But yeah, I think, and we tend to like over anthropomorphize the beings. Like if we, like in Hollywood, we all aliens are 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 ears. And, I think if they were to evolve on a different planet, much different climates, they're not going to look like this. They're not going to.
Right. Yeah. Like the traditional alien we all see, the one we think of it. Oh, when I think alien, I think little green man, right? That's way too anthropomorphic, in my opinion, to be realistic. Like if it's coming from a completely different planet, it's going to be something bizarre, and that species may not even actually have the desire or motivation to evolve that far.
Right.
Like they might just be content living on their own little planet, doing what they're doing. I mean,
right.
I think we project our ambition a lot onto other species. But if they come and take over, it's like, that's very human.
Well, yeah, and we're still trying to be the king of the universe. We're still just because, I mean, we're very egotistical as a species. We want power. We want our place.
Yeah, the fact that the rating scale for other like extraterrestrial civilizations is like what is it, like class 3 is like they've just harnessed the power of the entire solar system. I'm like, why does that make a species like so superior in your minds?
Yeah.
It's just our scale.
True.
A little irritating for me.
Yeah. So I don't know where to go from here. I was thinking back to, you mentioned as a kid you were raised Christian, but you were also looking different ways. The older you got, the more you got out and started seeing and doing your own research, stuff like that. And we were talking the other day about the Robert Monroe Institute, the whole gateway thing. You mentioned as a kid, you kind of have some memories of this, what's called the gateway experience. It was I don't know if the gateway experience was a real, I mean, it is real. It was a real thing, but the CIA actually like studied this from Robert Monroe. They were very into psychic spies, very into, I mean, Stranger Things series is based really on a lot of stuff with the MK Ultra, a lot of abuse and a lot of things that had to happen to especially younger people to get them to move into this whole world of astral projection, remote viewing. But it's a real thing, and you can look it up through CIA documents that were released a few years ago. It's a real thing. But you mentioned something about the gateway experience, and it's a certain type of tones and uh, like binaural beats and frequencies and stuff that people would listen to, and you kind of have some recollection of that. You mind going into that?
Sure, sure, yeah. So I started public school in 5th grade, and
Well, there's your problem.
I mean, I did. Yeah, my parents were like, "You guys are probably gonna end up being weird private school kids. We should probably put you in public school." So I started public school, and pretty immediately, I don't know if like my mom heard about the special gifted child program, or if they just kind of spotted me and were like, "Your daughter's a candidate." But my mom's like, "Yeah, you should do it. You should go through it." One day,
And where was this? What is this? Was Oklahoma?
this was an Oklahoma public school. I'll leave the school's name on it. But there was this woman, would take you out of class, and we would go do this little test in like the kind of the principal's office area. It's one of the tests. I don't have a very strong memory of this, but I do now. I do remember going back in the office. I had some headphones on. It was a test I believe I took on the computer. And I do remember one of the things that I listened to was one of the gateway meditation experience things. As I listened to them in my adulthood, and I was like, this sounds so familiar for some reason. I'm aware of I heard this before. And the gateway thing came up in pop culture again. And I'm listening to Stranger Things, and I was like, that's where I heard that. And one of the tests too was trying to predict what sound was going to come in what ear.
Okay.
They were definitely testing for like, clairvoyant like prediction abilities. And you kind of felt like you were messing up because you weren't able to do it.
Right.
But that's what they were doing. And then once, you pass the test, then you would go to like a class like once a month, and you would get like some enrichment. We called it enrichment at our school. I remember there was one class I remember from the whole thing. I don't remember anything else as far as right now. And one of the assignments was basically we were given a scenario. If 3,000 years from now, an archaeologist is digging, and our society is like buried under layers of rock and sand and dirt and whatever, they're excavating our society. What do you think future societies would think about our common everyday objects? And this was in comparison to archaeologists today projecting their theories about ancient Egyptian objects. So we were immediately tying this, like it was the association to ancient Egypt. And like, I still remember that to this day because I was writing my description as like the so-called, future archaeologist. And my teacher thought my theory was really funny. And that's why I remember that assignment, was because getting the positive attention. But yeah, it like really made me think about, I remember it really made me think about ancient Egypt. And I was like always really fascinated by ancient Egypt as a subject even before that. So yeah, it was definitely odd. I was like, I don't know why we would need to know this, but it does seem like a good mental exercise,
Yeah. Were there any like grading scales for this? I mean, did you get a?
No, it was just kind of like comment and feedback. Like, here's a thought exercise. Here's a puzzle.
So I think they really were searching.
They were like, I do remember the tests or the assignments were so strange. I remember feeling like, why would anybody think to do this? Or what would ever be the reason for that? And it was never anything about math or English. It was always kind of like detective work almost.
Yeah.
Like we were looking for something. There was another one. I don't know why it's like the assignment feels like it's on the tip of my tongue right now. Like the memory. I'm like, what were we doing? Anyway, if it comes to me, I'll bring it up. But there were a lot of odd assignments. But
yeah, that's big news right now, and one of my favorite topics, because there was a lot going on, especially during the I guess the Cold War and even before, and during Operation Paperclip, we brought so many Nazi scientists over here, and yes, they may have helped us get us to the moon or not. I'm not. I don't know if we did that really, honestly, but there was so many nefarious things that they brought over here when they brought in the Nazi scientists, and that was one of them. They saw a They saw a chance to get ahead in the world. Speaking of egos and greed and power, they saw a chance to get ahead of the world by using some of the Nazi, basically MK Ultra stuff. They wanted to have remote viewing. They want to have psychic spies that can see, what's going on in Russia right now. Where's the submarine at? Where are the missiles being built? It's really proven, and it's wild stuff.
To talk about that in relation to the gateway experience now, my first time listening to one of those tapes in my adulthood was having or it was like my first or second experience. The first one was like really kind of vague and like scattered, like remote viewing. I think it was looking at other dimensions, but my second one was so clear. Like I was like, I think I'm in the Akashic Records. Like, I just remember thinking, looking at everything, I was like, this feels like some sort of alien library.
Hmm.
And there were beings like floating around. And I remember just completely being disembodied. It was like my first totally disembodied, like arguably astral projection type feeling experience. And I remember just not being aware of my body. And there were like these kind of like, I don't know how to describe them, but they were kind of spherical machine looking things, but they almost had this semi consciousness to them, like almost like they were looking at me. Like there were all these eyes all over the wall. It's like kind of like in the arrangement, a beehive has a honeycomb.
Yeah.
But it was just like all of them contained information. And there were like librarians floating around. They kind of had like
Right.
dragon-esque energy, like, or wyvern. I don't know what people call them anymore, but they were definitely all like spirits. And there were also like these like stalactites and stalagmite looking structures. It was almost like this huge cavern structure thing. I don't know. I vividly remember that experience and like going through a window before I arrived at that place. And I just remember trying to take it all in. But the second I was like conscious that I was not in my body, it went away.
Wow. Yeah. And this was after you listened to.
That was my second time listening to the Gateway experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my adulthood. So there was like one, and then I think a week later I did it again, and I was like, that was crazy.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Have you thought about doing it again?
I hesitate sometimes now because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to see next time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of awakenings that can happen. I know you've heard of the whole chakra thing and the either spiritual enlightenment or the awakening. There's sometimes that people get, or sometimes they go too far the opposite way, right? They become, I can't think of the word, but it's like super enlightenment. It has something to do with
Kundalini awakening.
Yes, the Kundalini. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes it hurts people. I mean, if they're not ready for it, or maybe they weren't mentally prepared for what they're going to see or experience. So it ruins it for a while. They like have mental break if they're not mentally prepared for it.
Yeah. No, I've heard scary stories about that. Like if people tried to force it on someone else, or if like someone was just pushing for it too hard, like it'll make you have a psychotic break and then you might not come back. Like I could feel myself like when I was going through my spiritual awakening and doing all the reading and the shadow work, like I didn't really go anywhere because I had the privilege during COVID of just being able to kind of stay home.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was a 2-week period that it was like almost like I didn't sleep, eat, go to the bathroom because I felt like I was just kind of floating inside of my body. Because I think I had expanded my consciousness so rapidly in that time that I was having trouble containing it. And then I had to like give myself an ego check and like bring it back down to earth. And then I never really lost it again. After that, I was like, okay, we're gonna pace this a little more steadily. And then following that, a few months later, maybe a couple years later, I gradually kept doing that, just kind of pushing the boundary just a little bit. And then after I met some people and started pursuing astrology really heavily, and I was like in my practice, making videos, taking clients, I like met some people and they were like really strong relationships in my life. And it was my first encounter with Kundalini energy. And it was just like wild after talking to these people, after we would share certain experiences. It was like my spine would start eating up.
Yeah.
like getting really hot. And like it would also get really exacerbated at night, and I would like wake up sweating.
Yeah,
And
that's
I just wouldn't be able to sleep. I was like, my back is like just right there on the spinal column. It's like burning up.
yeah,
But it was never like a full, but sometimes it's like your kundalini is like trying to move up.
yeah.
So
I've heard that.
yeah,
If it goes all the way to the top, it's like,
yeah.
yeah, I, I, I think I'd be too afraid. Probably.
I don't know if you have a choice once it reaches the top.
Well, no, but I'm just saying I think I'd be too afraid to try that or start that process. Sometimes I'm better off being an ostrich, keep my head down near the sand. I think.
Sometimes it's
For certain people.
Yeah, some people just get, they just get blessed, or they have the right experience, or the energy comes into alignment, and then go.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about your clients. You have a very popular social media,
Mhm.
right? And you want to go tell us a little bit about that, and 'cause you help people and with astrology and a lot of different things. So you want to tell us?
Yeah, sure. I don't do book readings anymore. Like I just kind of do it on a friend recommendation basis. So someone will run up to me and be like, "Hey, will you read my chart?" And I'm like, "Sure." And it's like I just do it for fun now. I started on TikTok. I had a really tight knit TikTok community. My name is Zyla Bones. If you guys want to go check out my videos,
I'll add a link.
yeah, they're really fun. I was definitely a different person at the time, but it's still part of my personality. I like to do it. I like to keep things practical, but I like to keep things like fun at the same time. I'm like,
Sure.
why can't we apply some to humor? But yeah, people would find me on my live stream and they would book a reading with me. And I would give them like a 2-hour private sit down and chat video call. They would, I'd kind of go through the report and then like kind of say things as they came to me. And I made a lot of progress with people. It was really interesting to not know anything about a person and then somehow know a lot about them, like from astrology. Like it would blow my mind every time I would do it. I'm like, how am I doing this? Like I'm just following what I feel like is rules and using some empathy, and then I would just like put some things together and they're like, how did you know that? And I'm like, honestly, I don't know. And I would do tarot as well. I do like $5 through cards or $5 one card. Sometimes I'd change the price, but depending on if it was a good or bad day. So
If rent was due or something.
yeah, so rent's due, it's gonna be $10, guys. But no, I've learned a lot. It's been a very useful thing still in my practice. And I've just been kind of like utilizing it now to understand what energy to be using to accomplish our goals. Because sometimes it's good to be aggressive. Sometimes it's good to be a little bit more passive. Sometimes it's good to be masculine. Sometimes it's good to be feminine. But you got to know like when, why.
Sure. You got to read the room.
You got to read the room. Yeah. No, it's super important. I don't remember what that question was. I forgot the whole question. I hope I was aggressive there.
Oh yeah, no, I wanted you to tell people about how to find you if you want to be found. Yeah, I think I definitely want to have you back on. There's so much we could talk about, and we kind of covered we ran the full gamut of stuff tonight, sort of. I mean, there's still a lot, but yeah, told you wouldn't keep you long, but I appreciate you coming on. This is my first in-person deal, so I'm thankful for you to hang out with me, especially after work. It's been a long day. But if you would like to tell everybody where they can find you, you can look straight at the cheap camera.
All right. If you guys want to check out any of my videos, they're at Xylabones, XYLABONES on TikTok. There's lots of fun tips on there. And that's kind of it. It's kind of, I also do I used to do a podcast.
What?
On YouTube. Yes, I used to do an astrology podcast with a friend of mine. And
you should bring that back.
Yeah, we're not friends anymore.
You got to find anything.
We had a great dynamic, I will say that. I thought we were very charming in our dynamic duo. I don't even remember the name of the podcast now. I'll put it we can put it in the comments or something.
Sure.
Or in the description. Yeah.
Yeah, let me know. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Oh, sure. We'll do this again. Thank you guys for tuning in, all 4 of you, and maybe even my sisters and brothers. yeah, come back to the Mysterious Huntsman next week. I'm gonna, and by the way, this episode is gonna drop in a couple of days. I think it's gonna drop on Wednesday. But you can find the Mysterious Huntsman on YouTube channel, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So, also website themysteriousHuntsman.com. It's got a little more information on there about things. And yeah, stay tuned, guys. Thank you for listening.